Dynamic Women Talk Radio with Sandra Beck and Linda Crater celebrate the thoughts and opinions of magnetic, spirited, and influential women. Each week, bold, brilliant women spark vigorous conversations on the complexities of life, love, and happiness. Now here are your hosts, Sandra Beck and Linda Crater.
Hey ladies, this is Sandra Beck and I'm here with my lovely co-host Linda Crater, and we've got a rocking show today. We're going to talk about communication. We're going to talk about denial. I love denial. I'm such a good denier, and it's so good. We've got Kathy Krafke today, Kimberly Rinaldi, Frankie Picasso, Linda Franklin. We are going to have a great show today, and I'm going to go to Kathy Krafke first because you're the one that came up with denial in conversation, and I'm so excited to talk about this because it's so different than your typical how do men and women communicate, blah, blah, blah. Kathy Krafke.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you. We had that conversation about voice and you called on me, Sandra, and you just essentially gave me a voice. And I love the way you do that in my life. So thank you for that. But I'm laughing because I know a lot about denial in conversation. And I probably shouldn't even say this, but you know I love alpha males. I'm married to one and I've raised one and they're just so awesome. You can hook your wagon to an alpha male and you know they're going to get there. But one thing they don't do as well is listen. So one of the things I thought it would be fun to talk about is I have all these, 34 years of experience developing ways to talk to a husband who might not want to hear me. And I just love to hear other people's ideas. I love to hear what other people have tried that's worked.
All right, we're going to go to Frankie Picasso, Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
Oh, thanks for that.
Well, if you put in the chat, I'm going to call on you.
I guess so. Denial. How to communicate with alpha males. Well, first of all, we all know that men can only focus on one thing at one time, where women are focusing on 10 things at one time. So you almost have to get in front of their face, like eye to eye, for them to understand what you want to say or what you're saying to them, because they don't hear you if they're involved with something else. Have you experienced that?
Oh, Linda Franklin, New York City.
Actually does get through. It's happened to me so many times, and it really works that way.
Kimberly Rinaldi, Los Angeles.
You know, what I've found is getting them to repeat back to you what they think you said right after you've said it is a real clarifier, because very often what you've said is, what kind is it? And their response is 3:00 because God bless them, they heard what time is it.
Linda Crater, Washington, D.C.
I loved what Linda Franklin said about timing is everything. I absolutely agree with that, because we've all seen men tune out as we're trying to make our points. I definitely agree with picking your timing. Depending on the topic, I also believe in planting seeds and taking small steps, because sometimes if you're asking them to take a big shift in direction or thinking, or it's new, or it's just not what they'd considered, if you take it in small steps, it seems to be accepted better. But I'm going to insert something else into here. I think that women are often guilty of what I call female conversation, which is it cold in here? And what we really mean is, could you turn on the heat or hand me a blanket? and I worked very hard with my children to make sure they did not talk that way, because I think it's a weakness that we fall into as women, and it's something we think about. I think it could be generational. I could be showing my age here, but I really think that sometimes we set ourselves up for not being understood by not really asking what we're saying.
Well, I think clarity is key, and this is Sandra. And one of the things that I found, and my mother used to do this with my father, who was an alpha male, and she somehow could make the conversation seem like it was his idea.
Right.
And she would do that not only with him, but also, like, we've got 2 alpha females in the house. It was amazing how she could swing the conversation around that I really thought it was my idea, and I was more apt to go with it. We're going to go to Kimberly Rinaldi in Los Angeles.
You know, I'd like to circle back to the whole denial thing as well. I have a sister, and bless her heart, any challenge she has, she will literally look me in the eye and say, can't you just hold me and tell me everything's going to be okay? My response is typically, have you ever met me? Reasonably, there are people out there who just don't want to hear the truth. And that doesn't resolve anything. I stand by a statement that I use a lot, which is avoidance is not resolution. Mm-hmm. And these are all avoidance tactics. Resolution can be a difficulty, and sometimes the not revolution, but the resolution is understanding you will always sit at opposite ends of the table. You will never see that other person's side, but understanding you've communicated what you need to in the process. And I think that's a difficulty for both men and women. Women maybe a little more.
Frankie Picasso, Toronto, Canada.
Just to get back to what Linda said, I was watching a movie and there was a guy in the movie giving advice to his son, and he said the one thing you have to know about women is the temperature's never right. The sweater was perfect.
That's good.
I think that we need to talk about withholds too, because a withhold is a lie. A withhold is when you hold back what you're really thinking because you don't want to have a fight, or you don't want to put out there what you really feel because you think you're not going to be liked or respected, or whatever the case is. It is a lie. So it's important that somehow you communicate what you are thinking and feeling in a way that people will understand you, because you can't hold on to it.
Amen. Let's go from Frankie Picasso over to Linda Crater, Washington, D.C.
I was thinking as you said that, Frankie, that this is a little bit of a tangent, so pull me back, but it reminds me of what I call garbage debating, where you go back and dredge things up and never resolve. So resolving things is very important. And I like to think that conflict is not necessarily a bad word. If it's a way to reach resolution, as you just said, then it's there, it's handled, and it's gone, and it's very clear and direct. It's when you do hold things back, as you said, the withholding, that is very difficult to deal with. I don't know if any of you have had this experience, but suddenly someone says, 3 years ago, you said this, and that's not fair because now you're saying this. I'm like, 3 years ago? That's a lifetime ago. What are you talking about? So I think withholding works on both sides, but I'm also a fan of resolving things as they occur, because I won't even remember it later on.
Me too.
Captain Krafke, East Texas.
Well, I loved this whole idea that Frankie just shared. In fact, I think that's going to be my quote of the day today. To withhold is a lie. I love that. And it does lead, it just sets you up to dredging. I first really became aware of this challenge of speaking to people who don't want to hear the truth a few years ago, many years ago, I guess, honestly, when I dealt with a man who was kind of a bully, and he found a way every time I spoke truth to him, my valid perspective, which he might not have agreed with, but it was still valid. Every time I spoke truth to him, he would find a way to tell me I was wrong. So in my desperation, because I could not avoid interacting with him for about 2 years. So in my desperation to get really necessary truth into his arena, I turned to scripture, and I discovered Jesus had 14 or more different ways to talk to people who are in denial. So for me, that was like, I was just glad to have the chance to discover that. That was so enlightening to me, and it made me happy to have to deal with a person who was so convinced he was always right, because it forced me to do something I probably would never have done otherwise.
Well, it just gives us additional tools in our toolkit to deal with difficult people. Linda Franklin, New York City.
I just want to circle back to timing just a little bit. I think I've said on other shows that I'm like a radiator, and I like immediate gratification. So if I'm feeling something or I want to say something, I mean it's like I'm going to explode if it doesn't come out. And that doesn't mean that the other person is ready at that particular time for a conversation. So many times I hold that back, and I just say, I know that you're busy now, and I respect that, but can we meet? Can we talk about this at 3 o'clock? And most times that works. He said, yeah, absolutely. 3 o'clock will be fine. rather than explode and again he's only hearing the blah blah blah, but at 3:00 he's ready for it, and he's more accepting of what the conversation might be.
Let's go to Frankie Picasso, Toronto. We're getting close to commercial break, so watch the time.
I will. That withhold is a lie. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to dredge. And there was a great points that you made about dredging things up 3 years later, because that is something I definitely don't believe in doing. You have grown since then, so of course your thoughts and feelings are gonna be different. But how can you get to know somebody who doesn't tell you who they are? I mean, literally doesn't tell you what they're feeling or what they want from you, or what they're what you can do for them. It's very difficult if they withhold their essence. So it's very important, I think, that people at least put on the table their cards and say, this is me, this is what I believe in.
You know what? I need to take us to commercial break, but I want to thank you, girls. I've learned so much. I've actually been sitting here taking notes because I was married for a decade to somebody who squashed, opinions and thoughts. So I got in the habit of never really sharing anything, and, massive withholding. And I think some of us who had dominant parents can also say the same thing, or dominant siblings. These are ways we learn to withhold even without intentionally withholding. Now we're going to come after the break and talk more about withholding, denial, and how to really get to know somebody. This is Dynamic Women Talk Radio. We'll be back after.
We're Dynamic Women Talk Radio, and we'll return after these short messages.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
One of the best things you can do to start the new year off right is to purge your pantry. It's amazing how much bad food we have all accumulated over the holidays. Chances are you have cookies, coffee cake, caramel corn, chocolate-covered nuts, or toffee, or some other calorie-dense food in your kitchen, cupboards, or refrigerator. Getting rid of that food gets rid of the temptation to eat it. If it's not there, you won't be tempted to chow down. Instead of holding onto it, throw it out and replace it with healthy, good-tasting food. You will automatically make good food choices because all you'll have to eat is good, low-calorie food to snack on. Start the new year off right and purge your pantry. I'm Annette Hammond. To hear other fitness and weight loss tips, visit our website at AnnetteHammond.com.
Notice you buy more groceries when you use a large shopping cart. The shopping cart, or trolley as it was originally called, was invented in 1937 by Sylvan Goldman, owner of 2 Oklahoma City grocery stores. Back then, shoppers carried their food in wicker baskets. One day, Goldman was observing his customers and realized that as soon as their baskets were full or too heavy on their arm, people stopped shopping. Goldman thought if we could somehow give customers 2 baskets, we could do considerably more business. What's another word for a resourceful person? A debrouillard. Goldman put wheels on some folding chairs, attached 2 baskets to the seat, and let the back of the chair act as a handle so the cart could be pushed with one hand. What do you call anything that can be manipulated with one hand? A thumbadoodle. I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
Hey ladies, this is Sandra Beck, and I'm here with Linda Crater, and this is Dynamic Women Talk Radio, and we are talking about communications, and we're really talking about some of these rules of engagement. At least that's what I'm taking away from it. And I've got a great, Kimberly Rinaldi actually has a great lesson or a rules of engagement here, and she says it's better to beg forgiveness than ask permission. So we're going to go to Kimberly Rinaldi in Los Angeles to start this conversation of kind of some of these rules of engagement. Kimberly.
And in real life, unfortunately, that isn't the case. But in the corporate world, I swear one of the mottos that I followed, unfortunately, was independent thought is frowned upon. We were taught not to think independently, you follow the corporate directive. And even if we had better ideas, we learned, and it was reinforced over and over, better to beg forgiveness than ask permission, because those independent thoughts, that direction, was typically squelched where I came from. I came from healthcare. Unfortunately, I brought that home because it was reinforced for 20-some years. I brought that behavior home for a while and had to sit down with Mr. Rinaldi, who sat me down one day and said, "Why would I not be on your side? I'm your husband, for goodness sake. I will support you, unless, of course, you want to go jumping off bridges and doing really silly things, and then I will give you the right to be heard and give you my opinion." But here's the thing. It's what we learn out in the real world, unfortunately, when it is reinforced, when it is anchored, we bring it home, and sometimes those are bad habits.
Right. What works in corporate America may not work in our households and our personal relationships. Frank Picasso, Toronto, Ontario.
I totally agree with that, Kimberly. That was my motto at work as well, because I worked in government and there was so much red tape that it was just better for me to go ahead and do what I needed to do and then say, "Oh, sorry," later. But unlike you, I didn't bring that home because I had some experience, and my dad, who had been running a company for a very long time, it was eye-opening when I went to see him at work and did not recognize who this person was. This was not the dad who was at home with me. This is like a stranger, somebody who's like very hardcore. And so I learned that you don't have to be the same person at work that you are at home. And that was kind of an eye-opener for me too.
We're going to go to Kathy Crafty in East Texas.
Well, Frankie, I just love the way you're highlighting the fact that we do have different roles. I always think of it like the baseball caps at my house. Of course, being in Texas, I can't wash them fast enough, and there's multitudes. I'll swear my husband goes out with one and comes home with 10, and my son too. So, but we have that many hats in our life as women. I just think of them as caps that we trade, and I love the fact that we're so versatile and can do that. The other thing that is striking me about this conversation is what Sandra said about rules of engagement, because there are rules of engagement that work really well at work that don't work at home in our marriages. As Kimberly pointed out, we bring some of these ideas home because they work so well at work, and then we find out at home they just really don't work at all. So I like the way she says it, rules of engagement, because
they're different.
Yeah, that gives us room to switch hats when we need to.
We're going to go to Lisa Dietrich up in Oregon. And I like that we have long-term marriages on here. And, we've got single moms, divorced moms. It's important that we talk about, if we mention the word marriage, it can mean a long-term relationship, but it can also mean our household. So I just wanted to lay that down flat. But let's go to Lisa Dietrich in Oregon.
Well, hello. One of the things that I found works very well in the corporate world, when you're not sure if, you can bring an independent thought out, I would just go to my immediate supervisor and speak my mind privately, in a situation where we could have a conversation. And sometimes my great idea would end up being my supervisor's great idea, which, was a little bit like, ouch. But, at the end of the day, my great idea became what was implemented into the corporate structure. So, it got back to, I think it was Ronald Reagan said, it doesn't matter if you have a great idea, go ahead and share it. I'm paraphrasing, as long as you don't care who gets the credit.
Let's go to Kimberly Rinaldi in Los Angeles.
Sandra, you brought up a point about direct communication and being sort of stifled or called on the carpet for it. I worked in healthcare, and it was emergency services, urgent care, not a lot of time for small talk. Things were done really quickly, and this got reinforced. This got anchored in me. I, even to this day, when responded to text messages or emails, I'm so used to, just shooting out a response, getting to the heart of things. I then have to go back and add the good morning. Thank you for responding. Lovely to hear from you, and sort of build around it. And then I have to remember to do that in my conversations, because I'm known for being very direct and to the point. And I will tell you your baby's ugly. It's just, you're going to put a baby in front of me. Everybody's going, oh my God, how pretty. I'm like, bring me a puppy. It's nice we're having weather.
You're Spanish and go, que camisa.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But yeah, it's again, direct communication for me. I became way over pendulated to the other side just because of the anchoring in the industry I was in.
Linda Franklin, New York City.
Well, I can agree with Kimberly on that one, because in Wall Street, the pharmaceutical business, you don't have time to think. I mean, money is everything on Wall Street, and if you miss your opportunity, you're kind of screwed. But and now I have to go back and do my emails the same way, Kimberly. I do them, and then I have to go back and make them nicer. So I do that all the time too. So I certainly can relate. The only thing I noticed in business was, I forge my thoughts because I'm not a shrinking violet, and I let people know, what was on my mind. But you know what? I had to be right more than I was wrong, because if I put out that thing and then wanted forgiveness, I only got a couple of passes. So I had to make sure that I was going to be right more times than I was wrong. Otherwise, I would have been out of a job. So you have to be careful with putting the gun in your holster all the time, because, sometimes if you're wrong more times than you're right, you're going to lose credibility, and that's not good.
No, and credibility is such a big part of, really of anyone. But I think women have to work harder to get credibility in certain arenas than men. Let's go to Linda Crater in Washington.
I agree that being direct can sometimes feel too intense for the recipient sometimes. But I have also found that over time, when you are direct, you are the same way, you are authentic, you say what you believe, you don't deviate from saying one thing and doing another, that people begin to accept you more that way. I wanted to circle back to the difference at home and difference at work, because I had the opposite problem. I ended up, when my husband liked the work persona better than the home persona. And so that was very difficult, because I was in pharmaceuticals like Wall Street. It's all male dominated, very hardcore. And so I was really, in reality, was the person at home, the mother, the wife, all those things. And when I came home, I wanted to shrug off that hat. And I wasn't actually allowed to do that. So the direct, it's the recipient often, the eye of the beholder in this case. And I think we have to find our way in terms of what works for us and what doesn't. And if that means going back and warming up emails, that's okay too. But I think we have to be authentic to ourselves in the way we communicate, because then we have a higher chance, I think, of being accepted.
Kathy Krafke, East Texas.
I really love, I can identify with what you said there, Linda. I think my husband was so happy when I started working, because my intensity was one of the things that it was so much at home that once I got into the working force, it drained off some of the intensity at home and gave me multiple things to focus on. And I think that actually turned out to be a good thing in our marriage. I mean, we're both happier, I'll put it that way. But the comment I wanted to come back to was this whole idea of talking to people who can't hear you. One of the nonprofits that I dealt with at one point, I was amazed. This was a common phrase. The phrase was, you have to earn the right to be heard. In this system of this particular nonprofit, that was one of the common things the mid-level managers were saying. It's important to earn the right to be heard. And that was so shocking to me, but it took me several months to unravel why that was false. So we've talked about leadership, and I just wanted to throw that out there. A leader has earned the right to listen, but sometimes they don't know that. So how do y'all handle that situation?
Frank Picasso, Toronto, Canada.
I just wanted to get back, Kathy, good points, but I did want to get back to that can-do persona, the girl who can do everything. Very abrupt at work and blah, blah, blah. I think that the downside of that is that you tend to attract people who want you to do everything for them. You attract people, this energy goes out and says, I will look after you, everybody come to me. And people come into your life that you maybe don't want because they're just attracted to, I'm going to call it a mother energy, even though it's not a mother energy, but it's I will look after you energy because I know what to do. You don't have to think anymore. I've got the reins. And I think that can be a little detrimental. And I found that in my relationships.
Mm-hmm. Because who we attract is a lot about, and Frankie, you talk a lot about attraction. Who we attract makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I've had, I've had several relationships that I attracted the wrong person because I call it the neon light was on that said, come here, I'll look after you. But that was professionally, it wasn't personally. And so that needs to be closed off, that loop.
Okay, I need to take us to commercial break. We're visiting today we've got Frankie Picasso in Toronto, Canada, Linda Franklin in New York City, Linda Crater in Washington, D.C., Kathy Krafke in East Texas. We've got Lisa Dietrich in Oregon and Kimberly Rinaldi in Los Angeles. So we're kind of spanning the country today. And if you like today's episode, you can check us out on dynamicwomentalkradio.com or iTunes to find this and more great episodes. Now, when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about what we attract, who we attract, and rescuing people, which I think a lot of powerful women or dynamic women do rescue, and that in the long run doesn't really help anybody. We'll be back after the break.
Resolutions don't work if a person is a mess. That's someone who clings to a bad habit. 88% of Americans make at least one New Year's resolution, and 80% of those folks fail by January 20th due to the dislike and fear of change. What's the word for the fear of change? Kinetophobia. With quite a few related to losing weight, at least you don't have to lose as much weight this year to be average, as 66% of Americans are now considered to be overweight. Don't feel bad if you don't keep your New Year's resolution. It's hard to be flascussable. That means changeable, from an old French word meaning to bend. If you're celebrating at a New Year's party, try not to get carried away. In fact, try to leave without any help at all.
It's Martin.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
The fat that is deep within your abdomen and fills the spaces between your internal organs is called visceral or liver fat. This belly fat poses a crucial threat to your health and needs to be taken seriously. Aerobic exercise such as brisk walking, jogging, and swimming burns calories. Resistance exercise such as weightlifting builds bones and strengthens muscles. Both of these modes of exercise are important, and both should be a part of your exercise program. Duke University Medical Center researchers performed a study and found that if you are trying to reduce visceral fat, aerobic exercise is your best choice. Aerobic exercise burns 67% more calories than resistance training, the researchers found. So concentrate on aerobic exercise to burn away that dangerous visceral fat. I'm Annette Hammond. To hear other fitness and weight loss tips, visit our website at AnnetteHammond.com.
Hey ladies, this is Sandra Beck and I'm here with Linda Crater, and this is Dynamic Women Talk Radio. And we are going to be talking about this segment about how we attract people. Do we attract what we put out? And do we really need to rescue as many people as we need to rescue? I don't think so, but I'm going to go to Linda Franklin in New York City to talk about, don't we attract what we put out? Linda Franklin.
Thanks, Ann.
Thanks, Ann.
Yeah, I really believe that. And what I attracted when I was on Wall Street, putting out the persona and the that Linda Franklin did then, I attracted that back to me. And now years later, I am softer and I want different things. So I am attracting different people. And the people that have known me all through, my many, many transformations, they tell me how much I've changed. And so I'm really happy with the people that I'm attracting now, because I feel that it's more genuine than what I attracted, when I was on Wall Street and had that hardcore exterior. So, and I think we have to know who we are, recognize all the transformations that we make through our lifetime, and if we understand ourselves and what we want, I think it's much easier to send out the message of what we want to get back.
Mm-hmm. Kathy Krafke, East Texas.
Well, I love that thought of being judicious about who we spend time with, and understanding what we put out attracts the same kind of people. And about, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I started writing a lot in our region and interviewing leaders constantly. It was just part of what I was doing at that time. It seemed like I was always in front of leaders in our area, in our community. And they all had this in common. They were wanting to help so much that I often felt like I was the person getting interviewed. They were looking for ways they could help me. But the other thing that was interesting about those leaders is they did not waste their time with people that weren't willing to get out there and work hard and be kind and serve other people. So that was fascinating to me, to see the connection between leaders who wanted to help people but were judicious about who they spent their time with.
Lisa Dietrich, Oregon.
Oh, I love that point, Kathy, because in our lives, there are so many people that come in and out, and there are those people that will suck the life out of you if we allow them to. And we just need to, again, be judicious and really look at what our role is here. Maybe part of our role is rescuing and helping people, but even then, we need to be careful about who we're bringing in and really take a good look at them and see if this is the person I'm supposed to be investing this much time in, or do I need to like the people you were talking with, be a little more careful and just kind of sidestep some of those relationships.
Kimberly Rinaldi, Los Angeles.
I have a 19-year-old niece, and she's dating someone less than desirable for who she is. And I keep sitting her down and explaining homes are fixer-uppers, men aren't. And we'll expand that out to people aren't. That being said, I worked in healthcare. I work as a coach. I help people develop. So for me, learning that boundary where I end and others begin, and learning mentorship, coaching versus rescuing, it's all ROI. And what is the return on investment? That return is change. Is this person willing or capable of changing? And if they continue doing the same thing over and over and over again, they are either unwilling or incapable of change. And that's where having healthy boundaries and the ability to step back and say, I can't help you if you're not willing to help yourself comes in.
Linda Franklin, New York City.
I agree with that, and to me it's mentoring, not rescuing. And if your heart is in the right place and you really want to help somebody, then I think you go ahead and do it. But I got mentored by a very, very smart man on Wall Street, and I know that if I had not followed his lead and done the things that he suggested that I do, he would have not helped me as much as he did. So it's a two-way street with people that are trying to help and people that need to be helped. And if that person that you're trying to help is not is there just to suck out your energy, then it's a very, very bad idea. And I think for me, I see that very, very quickly. But if all of a sudden they start to do something that really helps them because of your suggestion, it's like, oh my God, this is the best gift in the whole world that you're actually helping somebody, and it feels so good. And I think that you know that if you feel drained and frustrated and angry when you're trying to help somebody, then I think that's a great sign to say enough is enough. Let me step back. This person doesn't need my help. And the best way that they're going to find out for themselves is life experience, and that's the way you learn. So just back off and let life take over and go about your business.
Linda Crater, Washington, D.C.
I agree that that is a very big point, the difference between mentoring and rescuing. I have done both in my life. The rescuing has been all well intended when it was ever done, but I have learned that, as you mentioned, whether it's even in a life, if you don't work with the willing, they aren't going to, they're not going to step up and change, and they're going to continue to take. I always say that givers will always give, but takers need to set boundaries, because the others, they never do. Wait a minute, did I say that right? No. Givers need to set boundaries because takers will always move the boundaries. And so it's not a good thing to be used in that way. Rescuing even feels good at first. But as you said, Linda Franklin, when it starts to drain you, that's a big indicator that it's not there. The other thing I've noticed about people who want to be rescued is that they're often wedded to their, and if they would like to have a performance and they continue to do the same pattern again and again and again, tickets to their drama. But in mentoring, if someone is willing, I can add value to them, they're eager, and they then add value to others, love that.
Well, I love that idea, Linda, and Linda Franklin, the two Lindas, about the difference between mentoring and what was the other one?
Rescuing.
Rescuing. You know, there's a point I want to make about givers. Even though givers are wonderful, givers have a hard time taking and receiving, and that is a lesson that they also need to learn, because we all need help. We're not perfect. Just because I'm rescuing you or mentoring you doesn't mean I don't need it as well. And so I'm sure that there are areas in my life and in everybody's lives that can use some shoring up. So that's a big one. We do need to learn to do that. I had another point here and I can't remember what it was, but that's okay. Okay. So go ahead.
It looking at it, boundaries are a huge thing for me. And I, having grown up in challenging circumstances, did not have healthy boundaries modeled or put out there for me to learn. So that whole giver-taker concept, I wanted to be normal, and I wanted to make everybody happy, and I was going to be everything to everybody, and that's how I fell into healthcare. And then once I got in there, I thought, oh my word, everybody needs something from me, and they all need it today. I had to start modeling healthy boundaries, and it goes back to that saying no. It goes back to standing in, and I think Linda Franklin was saying it, how do you feel after you've done this? Is it detrimental to your energy? Is it feeding your energy? And yes, in the beginning, takers can lull you into that false sense of security where you're feeling good because you're giving to them and they're reinforcing, but you're teaching people how to treat you. And if you're not standing by your values and what's important to you, it becomes a sliding scale, and they will keep pushing those boundaries until they find you are at a loss and you walk away debilitated, everything is taken from you, and it doesn't feel good anymore. And you wonder how you got there. You got there by not standing for who you are initially.
Well, I love it that you're on that topic of saying and standing for who you are and boundaries, because as women, I think that's what we struggle with. This is about communication, and we forget to communicate what our needs are and what our boundaries are. So I love it that you're bringing that up. That's precious. I think it's so important for younger women to understand they have a responsibility to share or not withhold that truth.
I really think it's important to receive as well as to give, and I love when people tell me what they think, especially about me or what I'm doing. A lot of people don't because they're afraid they're going to hurt your feelings or they're going to upset you, but, that's how I learn. If I think I'm coming across in one way, but everybody's receiving it in a different way, then I'm only doing harm to myself. So if you can just be open enough to receive the information that's coming to you from the people that you respect, I think it really does lots of good for you, because what's going on in your own head isn't necessarily what's going on out there. So, learn to receive criticism or comments or feedback. I think it's really important that we do that.
Mm-hmm.
You're so right, Linda. And we really need to be willing to put ourselves out there and risk that somebody may start to suck life out of us, but we may also receive some very good feedback. What we don't want to do is close ourselves off because we're afraid that too many people are going to take too much from us. Because what I found in my life is that I receive way more when I'm giving than receiving. However, there are those people that will just take, and we need to be wise and learn how to spot that earlier.
Okay, girls, I want to thank all of you for being part of our show today. It'll help if I turn on the microphone. Let's see. All right, so we are here, Dynamic Women Talk Radio, and I want to thank our guests today, Frankie Picasso from Toronto, Ontario, Linda Franklin, New York City, Linda Crater, Washington, D.C., Kimberly Rinaldi, Los Angeles, Lisa Dietrich, Oregon, and Kathy Krafke, East Texas. Now, we're going to be back again next week where we talk about our belief systems and how do our beliefs affect us. Now, if you like today's show, you can check us out on iTunes. You can find us on Dynamic Women Talk Radio, where we talk about women's voices. We talk about commonality and balance and excellence and networking and leadership. And so if you want great rules of engagement, if you want great advice and great experience,
we're Dynamic Women Talk Radio, and we'll return after these short messages.